You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives. I'm your host, Michael Cohen, and joining me, as always, is the bead to my foe, Joe Hogan.
I feel like I did the exact same thing last time.
You did. You definitely did.
Right.
I mean, like, listen, that's what they're in for. I think I like to think of it as like a beware of dog sign, right? It's like the beware of dog sign isn't necessarily that the dog's going to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that you need to be aware of it. Like,
Yeah.
there is a dog here.
Just he exists.
It might bite you. It might
Yeah.
bark at you. It might just slobber on you and give you kisses.
Yeah.
But if you have a problem with dogs, turn back now. So that intro and the interaction that you and I just had for the entire internet to listen to is the warning of like, hey, if you didn't like what just happened, this probably isn't the podcast for you. And yeah, I think that it's going to do a very good job of that task, which I think is
and Joe might kiss, slobber, or bite you.
Yeah, exactly.
All of those things. Anything can happen.
Through the podcast, you'll just wake up in the morning. You'll be like, where did this bite mark come from? And I just want you to remember, you listen to Force Perspectives.
There's a horror movie story in there somewhere.
That's, you know what?
Podcast, I woke up with bite marks all over me.
I don't even want to say out loud the idea that I just had for because I should probably just go write it and then sell it, because that would be a good horror movie. But that's not what we're here to talk about, Joseph. We're here to talk about Star Wars, which on the other podcast that we recorded earlier today, we were not there to talk about Star Wars, but we did talk about Star Wars quite a lot. Whoopsies. So if you do like us talking about Star Wars, listen, because we gave you the warning and then we gave you the warning about the warning. So if you're still here, I am going to assume that you do in fact enjoy listening to the two of us talk about Star Wars. If that's the case, then you need to run, don't walk to the most recent episode of the ThunderQuack podcast that is on Patreon at the moment. And we'll be on podcast services later. So I don't know when you're listening to this, because podcasting is a liminal space and doesn't exist in time in the way that normal reality does. So you might be listening to this 5 years from now, in which case it's there. It's the episode that we talked about. We talked about the Acolyte teaser poster, the Frozen Empire early reactions or whatever. What else did we talk about? X-Men 97.
Yeah.
The title will say something along those lines. So if you are in the future trying to find it, we talked a lot about Star Wars in that episode.
I mean, mostly Star Wars. I feel like it was like an hour and 15 minutes in when we actually started talking about other things.
Yeah. But that's okay, because you know what? It's kind of what you signed up for on that podcast as well. And on this podcast, where we haven't talked about Star Wars yet, and we are like 3 or 4 minutes in. So now let's talk about Star Wars, Joe. Let's do it. Let's get into it. You brought the topic this time around, so I want you to kind of introduce it, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, so I mean, you and I have been talking a lot about expanded universe characters and expanded universe stuff in general. Like, they just re-released Dark Forces, which is obviously no longer canon, but there's a remaster for that game, and I've been going through that. So I've just been thinking a lot about the expanded universe. And, you and I have talked at length about, our feelings about the expanded universe and new canon. And it's cool to like both things. Like, they're okay to exist separately. And there's nothing wrong with liking the expanded universe. There's nothing wrong with liking the new canon. They can coexist just like any other. If you want to consider the multiverse, like it's nothing is hurting you. It's all fiction. It's all good. It's okay to like what you like. It doesn't change. The old canon stuff is not lesser or less important just because this new canon is going on. It doesn't change the experience that you had growing up playing your favorite video game, reading your favorite expanded universe comics, just because they're not quote unquote canon. It's all fiction. It's okay. You're fine. It doesn't hurt anybody that this new stuff is going on. We're getting more Star Wars. It's a good thing, right? So today's topic, I was thinking, well, not to dwell on the past because new canon is neat. There's a lot of stuff that is working. There's a lot of stuff that maybe isn't working as well as it could be. But I was thinking, since they are kind of making an effort to bring back some older canon story beats and elements and characters, like I thought it would be kind of fun if you and I just kind of thought about which old school Star Wars Legends canon, video game, comics, novels, whatever, elements, characters, stories, whatever, would be fun to bring into the new canon, but kind of maybe shaped in a way that, because new stuff, new groundwork has kind of been laid out, it would be presented in a different way than obviously the way we got it. So maybe something that could have worked did work as a video game might work better with this new story that's going on and could be part of, whatever series or whatever, just for like, a fake example. But yeah, so that's the topic. I thought that'd be a pretty neat thing to do today.
Yeah. I definitely have a couple in this that, I've even probably talked about them before on other podcasts or at least on Twitter. But yeah, I actually want you to go first, because I want you to sort of set the template and then I'll follow suit.
Okay, sure.
With some of mine.
So the one that, the thing that I miss the most out of everything from the old canon is Shadows of the Empire. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And for the longest time I was kind of holding out on like, no, Shadows could still be canon. Maybe they'll adapt it in some way or whatever. But then, they did all like the War of the Bounty Hunters stuff in the comic series, and like Crimson Dawn got involved. So like there's a lot more kind of stuff in the way from keeping that from happening. But one of my favorite things from Shadows of the Empire was Dash Rendar and Lebo and his starship, the Outrider. The Outrider is maybe my favorite Star Wars ship, like, ever. Because it's like, it's the cool 90s tough as nails kids version of the Millennium Falcon. It's super extreme because it's like, it's smaller, but it's sleeker and it's faster, quote unquote faster. According to Dash Rendar, it's faster. But like, that's always been like one of my favorite ships, and I love Dash Rendar. And there's a really cool book called Shadow Games, and it's basically the prequel to Shadows of the Empire, and it's the story of kind of Dash Rendar and Han Solo's rivalry. And I was thinking, it was like, wouldn't it be cool if they did do that Lando series, right? And you have Alden back, you have Donald Glover obviously as Lando, and you introduce Dash Rendar, and you introduce the rivalry between the three of them, because like Lando also knows Dash Rendar. Lando is actually the person that brings him in Shadows of the Empire. He's the one that like recommends at least maybe it was Han, but like Lando is happy to work with Dash because he knows Dash, he's familiar with him. I would love to see Dash Rendar in the Lando series and see like how that rivalry kind of happens, because like what was cool about Shadow Games is that we see a side of Dash that we didn't really get in Shadows of the Empire. In Shadows of the Empire, he's kind of he's Han Solo light, but he is a lot more braggy. Like his ego is a lot more prevalent in Shadows of the Empire. But in Shadow Games, we see him a lot more vulnerable, and he's a lot more self-conscious, and it kind of really gave us a lot of context behind why Dash was so egotistical and almost narcissistic in a delightful way in Shadows of the
Yeah.
Empire. I don't think it was like problematic. It was more like, oh my god, this guy's ego is enormous. But I don't know. Like I was thinking about the Lando series and like what I would want to see from that, and I can't think of anything I want to see more than Dash Rendar showing up and kind of shaping that relationship, and kind of informing the friend. So like maybe Han and Lando become closer because they weren't super close at the end of Solo, right? So clearly more stuff happened between Solo and Empire Strikes Back the last time we saw them together. So I really think that would be cool to have Alden back and introduce Dash Rendar and kind of those little elements of them working together and not really being a good fit, but like somehow they kind of make it work. I would love to see that. So I think a little bit of Dash Rendar with Shadows of the Empire elements, Shadow Games for sure. A lot, I'm sure, like take a lot of influence from that novel. Yeah, that's my number one. I would say that's the thing that I hope to see most is to get Dash back.
Okay. I have a question for you.
Yeah,
I have an answer to this question. Actually, I have two answers to this question, but I want to know what you think about it because you have more of a connection to the character than I do. Who do you cast as Dash Rendar?
God, I hate that it's Chris Pratt is the first thing coming. I don't want it to be Chris Pratt. I don't want Chris Pratt. Though. He's literally Dash Rendar, right? Like Star-Lord is Dash Rendar.
Yeah.
In every way. I hate it. I hate that that's the answer, but like it's a good answer.
So like I said, I have two answers to this question. And I was going to say I hate it. I absolutely hate myself for this, but it is the right answer. And if you want eyeballs, you want it to be a thing that like you want this to play at all four quadrants, I'm telling you, you put Chris Pratt in that role and all of a sudden everybody's going to forget about Alden Ehrenreich. And they're not going to forget, like they're going to be fine with it. Everybody's already obviously fine with Donald Glover as Lando. But if like listen, the three of them, you put the three of them together on screen, man. I think that you have a recipe for some gold, some absolute gold. That would be awesome. That would be really good. Because this is the thing about Chris Pratt. He is where he's at for a reason. It's just that he was oversaturated.
Yes.
And then we started to learn, because the second that these people are like in the spotlight in the way that he became, you start to learn about them as a person. And when you start to learn about him as a person, you're like, I don't know that I necessarily want to endorse this guy's behavior by giving him money and like telling people that I want him to be in movies and TV shows. But at the same time, like there is a very specific thing that Chris Pratt is good at. And Dash Rendar would be that thing. And he'd be so good.
I fully agree with you. Like, I'm not a fan of him as a person. Sick of seeing him everywhere. But honestly, if there was ever one role that I would say for that guy, it would be Dash Rendar.
So it really would. The only thing that really makes me hesitate on it is how close it is to Star-Lord, and that there's some crossed wires there, and that I think that Disney would probably look at that and go, "No, you can't." Yeah. So I do have a runner-up pick that I think is actually might actually be a better pick in the long run.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And that's Wyatt Russell. Because what you get with Wyatt Russell,
what is he from? I'm Googling.
A U.S. agent. Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Oh,
the other Captain America, right? The new Captain America.
Okay.
Also in Monarch, Kurt Russell's son, right? So what you get with that is essentially Kurt Russell as Han Solo. Because like Wyatt Russell can do what Kurt Russell do. Not quite listen, guys, listen. I really like Monarch. I really like Wyatt in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think he played that character perfectly. I really like him as an actor. I actually have listened to him on a couple of podcasts. I think he's actually a really like interesting person as well on top of that. Yeah, no, he's not. He is not Kurt Russell again. Because because Kurt Russell is Kurt Russell, and I just don't think that like, hey man, that they made him, they broke the mold. No facsimile, no substitutions. Kurt Russell is Kurt Russell, and Kurt Russell still be out there Kurt Russellin. So, they play the same character in Monarch, right? They are literally the same person at different points in time. I as like they as a father and son acting duo, they played the same character.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really good, it's really cool. But that's where I say that like Wyatt can like do the Kurt Russell thing, but I actually think that it would be really cool to see him in that role as Dash. He's got the right build for it, because I like, this is one of the things for Dash, is that I want Dash to be stockier, right? I want that. Dash has got to be like, he's got to be like a bulked up version of Han, so that like, because what I want Han to stand next to Dash and feel insecure, because Dash is like a better looking, like musclier, like
he's almost like a frat bro.
Oh, 1,000%, 1,000%. And Wyatt Russell would do that really well. It would be, I think Wyatt Russell does have really good comedic timing, and that he can be very funny, but he's often better as a straight man. I would like to see the potential of him not being the straight man in this instance, though, right? Because, and again, we're talking about this in the context of like a Lando series with him, and obviously you and I want to see Alden back as Han in this dynamic as well. So the three of them together, I think, actually would be really, really good as well.
I would love that.
I think I think that Wyatt would be able to play off of Donald and Alden really well. And like the absurdity of the character of Dash Rendar could come out in that way, but in a way that is very real. If Chris Pratt did it, we'd all be in on the joke, including Chris Pratt, including Dash, right? Yeah. He'd also be in on the joke, which could work depending on what the tone of the Lando series is, right? But I think that if you put Wyatt Russell in that role, he would be very self-serious, but we would all be laughing at him.
Right, yeah.
And so I think that's where I say, like, in the long run, I think that's actually almost better. It does nothing for the appeal of the show to the general public, which is one of the reasons why I put Chris Pratt as like the first choice, because he's the one who's going to like get that series greenlit, is like, hey, you're going to put Donald Glover and Chris Pratt in the same thing. Like people would be all over that. They'd be all over that. They haven't been in something together, have they? But yeah, I think that people would love that. It's like you're talking about like, you're mixing Community and Parks and Rec, and technically 30 Rock, because Donald Glover was on that as well. But yeah, like
I'm gonna throw a curveball at you though, because
I
first of all, I love that take, and if we got it, I would be first of all, I'd be thrilled we got Dash Rendar. I don't really care who they cast.
We'll get him eventually.
Yeah, we're gonna get him eventually. I hope so. Yeah. I really hope so. But I think another fun idea could be to go the opposite direction. And when we're introducing Dash Rendar, he's like a scrawny little annoying kid. Maybe like Tom Holland, right? Where he is the like annoying little tag along, and like he's just all mouth, right? And like nothing to back it up with. And over the course of the story, he kind of becomes Dash Rendar and like does bulk up and does get that like glow up, right? Like over time, he will eventually earn the way that he saw himself in his head as a kid, trying to impress, Han and Lando, trying to keep up with them. And then later on, he actually does kind of come into his own. Kind of how, like, I mean, not everybody feels this way. I could not stand Ahsoka when she was introduced. I thought she was so annoying.
Yeah.
And then she got her act together, right? She matured. She got stronger. She, she grew,
witnessed war crimes. Yeah,
right. But like I kind of feel like, all right, well, I think that could also work, where we give him a little bit more depth, because like I think the way you're approaching it does leave him some room to grow, but I think if we're starting him in an even like less I don't know, ideal place to be, where he, Han's more annoyed by him, and Lando is more annoyed by, you know what I mean? Instead of intimidated. Because I feel like, I don't know, maybe, see, now I'm going back and forth, because I'm thinking like, okay, well, Han kind of had his character growth a bit, and then it continues in the original trilogy, right? So he doesn't really I'm wondering if he really should have to overcome any weirdness with a character like Dash, because in Shadow Games, Han was already Han, and I think that's what worked really well about it, and that's what drove Dash Rendar crazy, because Han was cocky and could back it up, right? And everything Dash was trying to do, he was trying like to always get like a step ahead of Han, but Han was always just so like cool and laid back and like, and it drove Dash crazy, and I kind of like that dynamic from that old story. But he was still like a big bulky dude back then. Like he still looked the way, we always saw him to be. But I'm wondering if we make the outward appearance a little bit closer to the inward appearance, like I think that might be a fun thing, and then like see him transform over time. I mean, I don't know if Tom Holland would want to like bulk up over time, if that's like something that he would be interested in doing. But I don't know. Like I think it might be fun to lean into the vulnerability of Dash when we like quote unquote first meet him, because I'm pretty sure that's the earliest old canon story that we saw him in was Shadow Games. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Dash in the new canon would be fantastic. He's a character that's sort of near the top of the list for me for sure. And we haven't really gotten we've had a lot of hopes for him to show up eventually, but
I think someone said his name is mentioned in new canon, so like he exists. We just have not seen him in any way. I literally think it's like in War of the Bounty Hunters or something, somebody mentions the name Dash Rendar.
Yeah,
but like he never actually shows up.
Interesting.
Yeah. So do you have any? I'm sure you do. Do you have any?
1,000%.
You got one? You ready? You got anything in the chamber? What do we got?
Yeah, let me go. Actually, I'll start off with my number one as well. We'll just both start off with the bang. So my number one is an Obi-Wan story. There is an issue of the Marvel comics, when I am talking about the old Marvel comics, 1978 Marvel comics. This is after A New Hope, and like before even Empire is like going to be a thing, sort of. The comics are just going on telling new stories, right? And I want to say it's like issue number 7 or something like that, because I think the first 6 issues are a contained story, and then 7 was like a one-off issue, because it's very early on in the run. I know that. The framing device of it is that the issue starts with Leia talking to Luke, and Luke being like, I miss Ben, but I barely knew him, like I didn't even know anything about him. And then Leia goes, well, let me tell you a story that my father once told me about General Kenobi during the Clone Wars. And then the rest of the issue proceeds to tell a story about General Obi-Wan Kenobi during the Clone Wars. And this is in like 1977 or 78.
Right.
I think it's 78 that this issue came out. And obviously it does not resemble anything close to what ends up being canon, to the extent that like
I'm sorry. So you said this was issue like 7?
Yeah, it's something like that.
The original Marvel run. I gotta log into this because
and Obi-Wan is in this all black outfit, head to toe, except he's got these like sort of chrome white gloves and boots, and this belt that's like this big metal belt that's like a sort of like one of those like thick like cummerbund type waist belts. And it's Alec Guinness, right? Like it's very clearly Alec Guinness, but he's a slightly younger Alec Guinness, so he's got like the goatee. He looks like he does. I mean, it's a comic book from the 70s, so as much as he looks like anything, it's very clearly inspired by his look in Dr. Zhivago. I think it's Dr. Zhivago where he has the goatee. So he doesn't have the full beard. He has like a goatee, and his hair is a little bit longer than it was obviously in A New Hope, because it's quite short in A New Hope, but he's kind of got a little bit of wave to it, and it's very much young Alec Guinness. but still the gray hair and everything, so that he's recognizable as Obi-Wan. And it's just this story about Obi-Wan dealing with some like smugglers and ne'er-do-wells, right? Like it is of no consequence, but it's just this fun like swashbuckling story of Obi-Wan when we knew nothing about his origins.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to see that story adapted for a second season of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. And
Okay.
I really, really would love to see Ewan in that outfit. And the way that I get there is that like we know from, well, we don't know, but it is implied from the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi, because we see him in his outfit that is directly inspired by the Mythos statue, the one, my prized possession, my favorite,
Oh, I'm
my
so
lovely.
jealous that you have that.
Oh,
Oh
he's
my
beautiful.
god.
Yeah, it's him. And then I have a Sideshow premium format Superman, and the two of them are in the big case, and they stand side by side. With my Iron Man hot toys from Endgame. This like the three pillars of my idols. My false idols, but I mean, like they're not false idols. They deserve to be idolized, but we're not supposed to have idols, as you know, people, whatever. You guys get what I'm saying.
I got the joke.
I worship them. It is my
There you go.
altar.
There you go.
That's the joke that I'm getting at. So that statue, his backpack that he's carrying has his Republic armor. So it's his armor from Clone Wars, from the Clone Wars TV show. And obviously the Ahsoka series showed us that armor is canon, right? Because we saw Anakin's. So that means that Obi-Wan has it. If his outfit, because it's right down to the goggles around his neck, right? Like everything about that outfit at the end of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series when he says hello there to Luke is inspired directly from that statue. No concept art needed. There it is, right? They just made it real. So if we take that, the transitive property of making that canon means to me that along with everything else that he's got his armor somewhere, right? And that armor has like clone trooper elements to it. And the most important part of it is that if you look at that outfit, the undersuit is a clone trooper undersuit, which is all black, right? That season 1 Obi-Wan, he's got, like, if you look at his collar, he's got, it's like the collar of the clone trooper, and it also is like an implication of the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars outfit as well. But he, like, it underneath the robe, he's got the black clone trooper undersuit, and then he has the armor pieces on top of that, and it includes the gauntlets, the arm pieces, right, and the boots. So I would simply have him in that. Like, it would be like Bale messages him as like, hey, I actually need you for something again, like and that it becomes a bit of a gag of like, nobody else has Obi-Wan's number, but Bale is constantly like, I know I'm not supposed to, but I do actually really need you to do this. And where we leave Obi-Wan at the end of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series is very much in a place of like, oh yeah, I am actually a hero, right? But it's like, okay, so this one needs to be like covert, like last time was covert as well, but like this one, like you need to kind of take on a persona, right? And we know that Obi-Wan can do that because he became Reiko Hardin when he needed to. And I would even potentially just bring back that idea that like when he goes out into the galaxy, that he goes out as Reiko Hardin, and have him like shave the beard into the goatee, and it's been a couple of years, so it's, instead of it being like the sort of salt and pepper that he has in the Obi-Wan series, it's just like he's all gone almost completely gray. And so like he does look a little bit different. Like he's basically like going incognito because nobody would believe that Obi-Wan Kenobi is out there. And obviously Palpatine has told Vader, don't go after him. So it's like we kind of have already dealt with that part of it. But that like Obi-Wan goes out into the galaxy to do whatever it is that he needs to do. and he takes on this persona, and the look is this character is like this. It is directly inspired from the comic, because I just love it. There's a moment when he's kind of like, there's all these bad guys around, they're doing their bad guy thing, and he's there, but like he hasn't like announced himself as Obi-Wan Kenobi yet, and he's just like sitting in a chair in that like a like that like cocky throne sort of sitting pose where you kind of like slouched and you like the man spreading and like one arm on each arm of the chair sort of thing. So he's kind of like that, and is like very cocky, self-assured sort of pose. And then he kind of announces himself as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then these people are like, oh, well, what do you think you're gonna do? And he's like, and then he does, because all they have at this point for inspiration is what's in A New Hope. So he basically does the same sort of thing that he does in the cantina, right? Of like, these guys come up to him, they get too close, and he just whips out the lightsaber, and now we're done. Right? Same deal. So like I would love to see something that is just a little bit more of a fun pulp adventure than the Obi-Wan series was. The Obi-Wan series was a fun pulp adventure, but like it was sort of like mired in a good way in this angst that Obi-Wan was carrying. And that's the point of the story, is that he gets out of it. Right. So by the end of it, he has found himself again. And that last scene when Leia, asks him what he's gonna do now, and he's like, I don't know, what do you think I should do? And so get some sleep, right? And he has that great smile and laugh that he does with her, that he's just sort of like that, like disbelief of like, yeah, you're right, I probably should. That, like, I want to see a story with that Obi-Wan really, really bad. That's why I want season 2. But then I also really, 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 really want it to have flashbacks to a story that we don't have yet. So this can't be from EU. This is a story that only exists in inference and one anecdote. And that's Satine, right? Like that story of that first time that they meet. So I would love to see that as well. But yeah, and if you are going to bring Satine into live action, it has to be either Nicole Kidman or Cate Blanchett. It has to be one of the two of them. You have to get them. Cate Blanchett is the better choice, is the better one for sure. But obviously, like, Nicole Kidman, like, the reason why Satine is named Satine is, that, right? Like, it's the connection to Moulin Rouge.
Moulin Rouge, yeah. I want to say Mardi Gras. I was like, that's not right. Mardi Gras.
So Nicole Kidman is another, like, very obvious choice, but I don't know if she would. I don't know if she would do a Star Wars movie. That's a big question.
Has her British accent? I think that's important. We need the British accent.
I mean, she's Australian, so she's like
I guess true.
Just a tweak away, right? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like, it's actually, like, they should just retcon it. It's actually better. The Mandalorians shouldn't have American or British accents. They should have Australian accents, because Django is Maori. Yep. So, like, if you wanted to, that's what they should do. But anyways, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's all fine. So yeah, that's mine. I would really, really love to see that story adapted and put into season 2. Previously, I would have said that an Obi-Wan season 2 needed to involve Quinlan and Asajj and all of that. But there's a lot of reason right now, and I have no inside information. This is based on some things that Nika Futterman said at a convention recently. And it's hearsay, because it's a fan saying that they talked to Nika Futterman and she said this. So take it for what it's worth. But there's a lot of implication. There's a lot of reason to believe that the reason they're bringing Asajj Ventress back is because she's getting her own series. The next animated thing is an Asajj Ventress series.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fantastic. So with that in mind, I'm kind of like rethinking what I would want season 2 of Obi-Wan to be. Okay. Because I would have previously, I would have absolutely said that a season 2 of Obi-Wan should be Obi-Wan, Quinlan, and Asajj, right? Like that like, Obi-Wan and Quinlan for sure. Like, I want to see those two on screen again. But I definitely I definitely want to see Asajj Ventress in live action on screen going like, this is my boyfriend Quinlan and his boyfriend Obi-Wan. Because that's the meme, and I love it. I love that dynamic. I love me an accidental polycule. It just because and with that one, it's like it actually like is a very complicated one because Asajj and Obi-Wan have their own history as well that is confusing and alluring and a lot of fun. So yeah, I would love to see them on screen together in live action, Ewan doing something along those lines and playing that up. But I just want more Ewan as Obi-Wan. I just want more Obi-Wan. And I want answers to questions, and I really need them to just like properly set up the fact that Rey's lineage is a Kenobi lineage and not Palpatine's, and that Palpatine was lying the whole time.
He does lie.
He does lie. He's a lying liar. It's his whole thing, actually, is like he's Darth Sidious, and he likes to lie about things to people in order to get them to do what he wants. And it's a very easy retcon. It is as easy a retcon as saying somehow Palpatine returned. As a matter of fact, it's more organic than somehow Palpatine returned, which is fine. It's totally fine. It's a bit lazy in the movie in the way that it's executed, and it's disingenuous to the story that they were telling, but it's fine. It's more organic to be like, somehow Palpatine lied. Somehow? No, he was speaking, guys. Like, Palpatine said words, therefore they were false. Like, he told Kylo Ren what Kylo Ren needed to hear in order to motivate him to get him to do what he needed to do to get Rey where he needed Rey, so that blah blah blah. But none of it makes any sense because she goes there and he's like, strike me down and then I'll transfer into, and then he changes his plan halfway through, and it's like, you can blame it on the power of the dyad if you want to, I guess, but it's nonsense.
Or the writers.
I just blame it on sloppy writing. Well, I mean, it is a result of them finding the story in the edit as opposed to finding the story before they shot, which, like, I am all for it. Like, the edit is your last chance. Like, that's when the movie or the TV show or whatever story you're telling really comes together, is in the edit. And that's totally legit. That is part of filmmaking. But your story should not be undergoing massive changes in the edit without serious consideration for how that's going to affect the rest of your story. And to me, trust, they just shot a bunch of stuff and then figured it out after the fact, and that's why we have the mess of a movie that we have. And then they got, Adam Driver recording dialogue in a closet in a hotel like 3 weeks before the movie comes out. Like, it's absurd, but that's okay, because we have an opportunity with New Jedi Order to fix it all. I'll talk about that in a second. What's your next one?
Well, I guess I'll pivot a little bit. One of the things I was hoping for is also more pulpy Jedi adventures, and I don't just mean like, Clone Wars. Obviously, we ate really well with Clone Wars. Like, every week was, for the most part, it was a Jedi adventure. Not every week, but most weeks we got a cool little fun self-contained story with Jedi doing stuff. But man, I think back to all like the Dark Horse comics and like what we talked about, that Jedi Council story, like that 4-issue story, like on God, what did we even talk about that on recently? We did it like a week ago, I think. Like,
Rebel Cells. It's not out yet. It'll be out on Wednesday.
Okay, cool. Yeah. There are so many like little one-shot stories that don't take place during Clone Wars that are awesome. Like, my favorite story out of Star Wars Tales, it was 14 issues. Every issue was kind of like a grab bag, similar to Star Wars Visions, where different artists, different writers, different like team of artists came together every week. Sometimes it would be like a parody, sometimes it would be a really serious story, sometimes it would just be like a lighthearted, cool little slice of life. You never knew what you were gonna get, but that series always delivered really, really, really awesome non-canon, like just one-off adventures, and like always with Jedi during like the prequel era and before Phantom Menace and whatever. And I love that stuff. And my favorite one was called Incident at Horn Station. I think that is the like perfect story. It would make a great Tales of the Jedi story, but the problem is the punchline is at the end of it, the character the whole time was an undercover Jedi. Like it was like, but like it's the perfect Quinlan Voss story. Like Quinlan Voss is undercover because like that's his thing, right? He's always going undercover. Put Quinlan Voss in the position of this no-name character who is basically this like stuttering fake smuggler miner guy who's being taken advantage of because his ship broke down, and while he's there there's all these like terrible things going on in this town that's occupied by this warlord and everything, but it was never an accident. But I mean, I guess maybe Quinlan wouldn't be the best way to do it if you want to kind of like keep that punchline, but maybe there's a way to adapt it where it's still like there has like some meaningful impact. But the point is like there's so many good stories like that I would love to see in Tales of the Jedi, because like Tales of the Jedi so far we've only gotten the one very, very short season. It was, you know, obviously half Dooku, half Ahsoka, and like there kind of was a little bit of a loose theme, because like Ahsoka and Dooku both kind of realizing I don't belong in the Jedi Order. They saw the Jedi Order's flaws, and you know, went two very opposite directions with that. But like there was that commonality of like the both of them were, I don't know if disenchanted or disenfranchised is the right word. Maybe both of them are right. But they just felt like this is not right. There's more to it than this. There should be more to it than this, you know. And then they, you know, did their own things. And obviously a lot of that was told in the prequels and a lot of that was told in Clone Wars, especially Ahsoka. But, you know, there was that commonality between the two of them. So I'm not, maybe Tales of the Jedi isn't the way to go about doing those like lighthearted, maybe anthology pulp adventures, because I really don't know what they're planning for season 2. But I agree with you. I would love to see that Obi-Wan story, even if it wasn't live action. I think that would be a really fun Tales of the Jedi story, because I definitely think we need to see the Mandalore story of how Obi-Wan and Satine met, because like I think there's a lot of like really awesome story opportunities for Tales of the Jedi, and I just hope it becomes something bigger than what it is right now. It's great that it was like this little self-contained mini thing, but since we're getting more of it, I'm hoping that means that there's just gonna be more to it than what we got. At the same time, if the Ventress stuff is right, maybe we'll get more stuff. See, I feel like that would be more linear storytelling than a pulpy anthology story. So I don't know. Well, I hope, honestly, if that's the case, if we really are getting this Ventress series, which I would be more than happy to see, I hope Tales of the Jedi stays anthology based. And because I think that's the perfect opportunity to bring back so many of those like awesome Dark Horse stories, and even that like Obi-Wan story. I really want to read that issue based off of everything you said. I really want to hunt that down, because that sounds super cool. But yeah,
I mean, it's not gonna blow your socks off. It's not like an incredible story.
Oh yeah,
it's just like a fun little
still,
like,
yeah, exactly.
Like this is what they thought Star Wars was at the time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's fun to explore it in that way. But I just love that outfit so much that it's like I really need to see it in live action.
Yeah, but I think if there is no season 2 Obi-Wan, or that's not something that they do, I mean, it's I really miss the format of Clone Wars. As much as I love Clone Wars and the overarching story and everything that they did tell, Clone Wars like was my favorite. That's not true. It wasn't my favorite, but it's just because it turned into a different show. I do miss what it also was when it first started. Mm-hmm. Where it was just, it felt, because it was like, even the first 2 seasons were so like out of order, right? Like you would have stuff that took place before the film in season 1. And then like somewhere in season 2 or 3, you'd have an episode that took place before everything. And it was just like, what the hell is happening right now? Like what, like it kept jumping around, and like, oh, okay, this is just a collection of stories that, I mean, we know the truth is a lot of it was just because of production issues, that some episodes were delayed seasons or whatever. But like, I still appreciated that about that story, that it was just like, okay, here's the adventure of the week kind of thing. It was very lighthearted, and, you know, we didn't really need too much other than like a self-contained little story. And I think there's so many awesome self-contained little stories of, you know, Jedi running around during the prequels and before the prequels and all that stuff, that I think that would be really fun to take a lot of those and put those into Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay. So I guess I need a second one now, don't I?
Yeah.
So I think one of the other places that's really like sort of fertile soil at the moment to bring into the canon, to bring into live action in particular, is in the New Jedi Order era. We've talked a lot over the last little bit on different podcasts about this next Rey movie and what it's going to be. And I would really like to see the Yuuzhan Vong stuff. I really want to get us to the point of like of the Vong, and I want to see like that Koran Horn story that I talked about on I think our last episode, right? With our EU characters, right? That I would love to see some of that stuff come to fruition in live action in films, like specifically in films on the big screen. So yeah, like there's nothing, I don't know that there's anything specific that I am that concerned with seeing. It's just sort of like the overall of it. I think one of the most interesting things about the New Jedi Order era is that it was for a long time primarily and really only written, right? There was not there were sort of like these very loose images of the Vong on the covers of the books that were like these weird Photoshop collage images,
Right.
and never really like a clear this is what the Vong look like until sort of like the 2010s, I want to say. Like I think that Star Wars Invasion, the comic book series, was the first time that we really got like concrete, like this is what the Vong look like, right? And it was around that time that I think maybe we got a couple of action figures as well, and stuff started to coalesce into like a real form. And I think that's a lesson that they learned with the New Jedi Order that they applied to the High Republic stuff, where like the High Republic has its own art book because they wanted all of the authors and everybody drawing comics and stuff to be working from the same concepts and the same ideas. So like the way that the robes look, the vector starfighters, the what's the space station called, the Starlight Citadel or whatever, like they like all of this stuff needs to be consistent. Like the characters need to look the same throughout. They need to, because they're going to appear in comic books and cartoon shows, and you know, this novelization with some illustrations and this piece of promo art and this cover and what have you, right? So that they got a lot better about it. But back then with the Vong, it was just kind of all up for grabs. But I think now we have like a cool visual language for the Vong that is so different from anything else that we've gotten in Star Wars so far, that I think it's a really good opportunity for them to distance it from the original trilogy, because The Force Awakens obviously went completely the other route, which was to directly reference everything from the original trilogy, and make it like just shiny new Apple Store versions of it, right? Like down to like the X-Wings are just different versions of X-Wings, right? Like instead of doing a new starfighter, here's just the old starfighter again. And the stormtroopers are just updated stormtroopers, and you know, Kylo Ren is just a different Darth Vader, right? Like it repeated a lot of the same stuff, which I don't have a problem with. I really love the design of the sequel trilogy, but my problem with it is that like I can handle that as a Star Wars fan, but there are a lot of Star Wars fans who can't handle it because they see the familiar things and they see these familiar tropes and they go one of two ways. That's not the same thing and now I'm mad, or that's too much the same thing and now I'm mad, right? So there's no winning. But I think that like you bring in the Vong as the villains instead of the Sith or Dark Jedi, or even because like even on with Ahsoka with Balin and Shin, we have this element of like, well, are they Sith? Are they not Sith? Are they Dark Jedi? What are they? Right. And so it's like this whole thing that we're questioning. We're constantly measuring it up against this other thing instead of allowing it to be what it's meant to be. But with the Vong, like it's new. It's very new for the majority of people. Like I think like
Mhm.
you and I obviously have a familiarity with this stuff, and a lot of Star Wars fans have a familiarity with it. But I do think that there's an opportunity to create a visual aesthetic for a new era of Star Wars that's very different from everything that's come before, in the same way that the original trilogy, or sorry, that the prequel trilogy did, right? Like the prequels got flack for it, but I actually think that George was a genius with Phantom Menace, and with the first thing that we ever got to see, second thing technically, but the first piece of art that was like, this is a piece of concept art from episode 1, was the Naboo starfighter. So
Mm.
different from the X-wing, so different
Oh
from
yeah,
the
it was
X-wing,
awesome.
right? And I think that the Naboo starfighter and the N1, the Nubian, the Royal starship, and just all of that Naboo aesthetic did such a great job of establishing, hey, this is a different era. This is a different point in time, in the same way that like the 1950s look very different from the 1980s,
Mm.
right? And a lot of people rubbed against that the wrong way, because what they wanted was more Star Wars, or at least what they think they want is more Star Wars, and not understanding that what they want is, what we actually need is more Star Wars, meaning like expanded Star
Yeah.
Wars, like that Star Wars can encompass more than it already has, because that happened with the original trilogy. I mean, like, yeah, a lot of the aesthetic is borrowed and similar, but like people have this attitude that like that the original trilogy is like homogenous in some way, of like everything is cut from the same cloth, but there's actually a lot of visual storytelling in just A New Hope that gets across a bunch of ideas, because there's like, this is what it looks like on Tatooine. This is rural. It is backwater. It is like people live in mud huts, and they've got like borrowed technology plastered to the side of it, right? Like that's the look there. And then you have the Millennium Falcon, and it's this like hodgepodge of pieces that are all sort of glued together, and it's a piece of junk, but then like it's also beautiful, right? Like it's got a sleekness and a design to it that's like undeniable. And then you see the Empire, and you look at the Empire, and it's like, well, the Star Destroyer is stark white. It's stark white, right? And the Death Star is massive and matte black, and the TIE fighters are all in pristine condition, and there's signs of like of use, but they're not like in bad shape. And then we see the
Mm.
Rebels, and the Rebels, everything looks like it's been slapped together. It's all from a used car lot, and like we're figuring this out, right? Like we're a ragtag crew. um and then you get to Return of the Jedi, and when you get to Return of the Jedi, all of a sudden they've got the home one, and the home one is just as nice on the inside as anything on the Death Star, right? It's pristine. They got this hollow table thing that they're doing their briefing on, and originally in the design it was meant to be more of the like sort of Hoth aesthetic of like we've thrown, or like the Masasi temple, right? Like Yavin 4, we've like thrown this stuff together and there's cables hanging everywhere. And George came back and was like, no, 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 no. These ships need to be like perfect. And his reasoning was that he wanted to show that like the rebellion had grown, and these other people like brought resources to it, and like they might actually win this thing.
Mm.
Like the Empire has so like overreached and pissed off so many people in the galaxy, that like everybody's actually coming together. Like it's like this is really happening. And that like Mon Mothma and Admiral Akbar like have their acts together, right? As opposed to what we saw with Leia and Riken and those characters, where it was like, yeah, man, we're just trying not to get found. Like we gotta be able to pick up and move at a moment's notice, sort of thing. Like that sort of an attitude. So like it's been like that visual storytelling has been there from the beginning, and then you get to the sequel trilogy and it's just kind of devoid of that sort of thought. It's like it's there, but it's kind of it's a little bit more juvenile in the way that it's executed, because it's not, my thing is that it's not clear, right? I don't know how clear it is in the original trilogy. I feel it's really clear in the prequels that like, hey, this is a different era, everything is perfect, right? Like this is like, but it's not perfect, it's only perfect on the surface, right? It's like that was George's commentary on America in the 90s and the early 2000s of like, everybody wants to pretend like everything is great, but it's actually terrible underneath, and there are evil people running the show. But because everything's shiny on the surface, we think it's okay, and it's only okay for a certain type of person in a certain type of position. But hey, let's not get political in a Star Wars podcast.
Yeah, wouldn't want to start.
Because like the design aesthetic, the choice of the First Order design aesthetic in the sequel trilogy is that they're like copycats. They're like Civil War reenactors or like Nazi memorabilia enthusiasts, right? That like that they've gone and they've like recreated what the Empire was, but they're really just at the end of the day cosplaying as the Empire, right? And it's in there, like that's in there, but it's in there in like this really sort of like childish way. To me, it's not, it doesn't have as much substance, and that is by virtue of the fact that it is not carried through in the third film, right? Like in the third film, they're just treated as the Empire, like they just are the Empire, reborn. Whereas in The Force Awakens with Lawrence Kasdan's script, I think it's kind of clear that like Kylo Ren is pretending to be Darth Vader and Hux is pretending to be Tarkin, right? And like these characters all like they have these idols that they look up to and worship, and the Empire, the First Order is pretending to be the Empire, but it's not the Empire, right? And then the Last Jedi, I think, kind of lost that thread a little bit in the midst of it telling its own story that focused in a lot on Kylo and Rey, and Luke. So it's like we kind of lost that a little bit. And talked about different things in that movie about the nature of war and profiteering and stuff like that with Rey and with Finn and Rose's storyline. But it was up to, I think it was up to the third movie to like bring that home, right? And they didn't, because in that one it's just like it's totally surface. Like there is no commentary on the First Order in the third movie. There's no like subtext to the First Order. Like I said, they are just the Empire. They're just the bad guys, right? But yeah, anyways, they had an opportunity there. But so all of that brings me back to what I want to see brought from the EU, the stuff that is no longer canon in New Jedi Order, into what they're doing with this new Rey movie. Is like, I want to see the Yuuzhan Vong, because I think that it's a really great opportunity for them to distance from all of that, because obviously like the prequels eventually move towards it, right? There's sort of this encroachment into the original trilogy aesthetic. We see the clone troopers, we see the Republic Star Destroyers that'll eventually become Imperial ones, and Jedi Starfighters are little mini Star Destroyers, all of that stuff. The Interceptor Jedi Starfighters have wings on them like a TIE fighter, right? Like they were constantly peppering in these aesthetics to move us towards the original trilogy. But what I really want to see is like that, like let's leave that world behind. Because the New Jedi Order books even did it in the sense that they were like, what's the new starfighter? Oh, these are the new T-65Bs, right? And it's like, so what's the difference between this and a T-65? Oh, these ones are all black. Right? And it's like, so nothing is different, you just painted them black. Yeah, they look rad, they're like stealth now. And it's like, that's not new, there's nothing new about that. So I would even love to see that go further, and to have completely new starfighters introduced and all of that, so that when something like Luke's starfighter shows up in Rise of Skywalker, it actually has some sort of meaning. That has no meaning when everybody else is just flying around in an X-Wing 2, right? Like X-Wing number 2 as well as X-Wing TOO, right? Like, because the T-70s are just split wing X-Wings, like they're just they're but they're pretty much the same. And they're, like you could I think it's time to do something new with Star Wars. I love the X-Wing so much. So much, you guys. But let the past die. Kill it if you have to. Like,
Wait,
just,
but that's the bad guy says that.
well, that's the bad guy. Yeah, I love this stuff, but like I want the nostalgia to have punch again. It doesn't have punch right now. Whenever they do the nostalgia stuff, I shouldn't say that. Mando's N1 Starfighter had punch when they did that.
Oh
like,
man, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And like, I would love to see, this is going to sound so ridiculous after everything that I just finished saying, but I would love to see at some point Rey just rolls up in a Delta 7, right? With R2 in the droid socket, and it's just like, and we get some backstory that like, oh yeah, like this belonged to, and then just pick a character, right?
Obi-Wan.
Yeah, it would be great.
She's Obi-Wan's granddaughter.
Yeah. It would be perfect, right? Yeah, and yeah, like I think that would be super fun if it was like, yeah, so she's flown the Millennium Falcon, she's flown Luke's X-Wing, and now she flies around in Obi-Wan's Jedi Starfighter. Like that would be so cool. I would love that. Oh my god. Now if that doesn't happen, I'm just gonna be sad. But I want to see like what I want to see is like if Poe Dameron shows up again, I want to see that, like, he's like these are the new guys, like check these out. Like, you think an X-Wing was good? Like I've been working with this character that we're going to introduce. Like, let's introduce Quarry's son or something like that, or daughter. Let's have fun with it. It's Quarry's daughter, and she's like, yeah, man, I've been working with General Syndulla and Admiral Dameron, and like we've developed a new starfighter, and it's the best starfighter that's ever been created, right? And it's like, yeah, and then let's show us something awesome and new. This is one of my things, okay, guys, listen. The concept artists that worked on the sequels are supremely talented, and if you crack those art books, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of concepts. This is just the stuff that made it into the art books, that are light years, pun intended, better than the stuff we got in the movies. And I like the sequels, so I'm saying this as somebody who likes 2 out of 3 of the sequels. Aesthetically, I don't have any problem with The Rise of Skywalker. I actually really like the Sith stormtroopers at the end. It just doesn't make any sense for the story why they, anyways, we don't need to get into it. But yeah, like there's stuff in that concept art, and there are ship designs and all sorts of things that never made it into the movies, that it's like, you don't even need to do anything, guys, just pick the coolest ones. It's so easy. It's so easy. And those artists like have also done stuff that they didn't do for Star Wars that looks a lot like Star Wars. I don't know his name, his actual name off the top of my head, but his Instagram profile, I think, is Matt Sav Concept. Like Matt MATTSAV. I think if you search Matt Sav, you'll find him. And I think Sav is short for whatever his surname is. He's one of the concept artists that worked on the sequel trilogy, and he posts so much stuff that like didn't make it into the movies. A bunch of it is like awesome. I mean, he worked on Rogue One and Solo as well, but a bunch of it is like all of this really cool. They did a bunch of modular weapon designs, so it's like different rifles and stuff like that were meant to like come apart in different sequences, and there was a sequence that they were going to do in in Tross where Rey is cleaning her blaster, the blaster that Han gave her. So he's got like a breakdown. I'm pretty sure it's the same guy. He's got like a breakdown of like the inner workings of Rey's blaster, as if like you disassembled it, you can see everything that's inside it. And you see that like the thing that not that many people have caught on to, but that like that blaster that Han gives her is actually an homage to his gun from Blade Runner.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like the handle and the body of it are like a direct reference, and then
That's smart.
and then the barrel is more like the barrel from his own blaster, from Han's blaster. But yeah, like it's very much styled after his gun from Blade Runner. But yeah, like you see some other like hints at that in that concept art, but like there's a ton of stuff that they did for these movies and the development of them that just never makes it into the films, that I think that you can just grab and you can just put it into stuff. Like it's just ready to go off the shelf. Like, yeah, that's really cool, do it. Like Finn's jacket in the Tross concept art, which I've talked about ad nauseum, but he's got that big puffy yellow jacket and it's so good, and I just want to see it. I want to see it on screen. But it's just, yeah, I mean, the prequels are that way too, though. You open up the prequel art books and there's so much in the prequel art books that's better than what we actually got in the movie. Like Revenge of the Sith has versions of like Plo Koon and Saisi Tin that have been through a war, right? And I just imagine what Clone Wars as a series would have ended up looking like had we gotten that version in Revenge of the Sith, instead of them just being in the same outfits that they were in the previous two movies. Like, because yeah, everybody was going to be like, there was a point in that development of that movie where everybody was going to be ravaged, right? Like the effects of the war had clearly taken their toll, and the Jedi were no longer the Jedi. But then for some reason George just like didn't do it. He pulled back on it, and so everybody's just in the same outfits, which is such a shame, because I think it would have been I think it would have told the story better if you had seen like Mace Windu and he's got like an eye patch and like he looks like he's been through it. Then the decisions that he's making, the poor decisions that he's making in Revenge of the Sith, would make more sense, right? And Anakin getting away with what he's getting away with, like, because imagine this: everybody else looks like trash, right? Everybody else has been through it, except for like a handful of these Jedi. Yoda's fine, right? A little worse for wear. He's aged a few years and that sort of thing. Obi-Wan's aged a lot. It's been rough, but he's okay, right? But Anakin looks perfect. Anakin looks beautiful. Like he looks exactly the way that he does in Revenge of the Sith. Like he's just walked off of the propaganda poster and into the movie, right? Like this is why he's the hero of the Republic, because like everybody else, like Saisi Tin's missing a horn and Plo Koon's got like a prosthetic arm. Like, you know, like everybody is just looking like they've been through war, like through an actual war. But you would then be able to like look at it and go like, so that's how Sidious pulled it off. Like he put these guys through hell. They were meant to be peacekeepers and he turned them into soldiers, and they weren't prepared for it. And that's how the Jedi Order ends up falling, right? And that's the story, but visually it doesn't get told that way. So I don't know. Grab an art book. I guess now this conversation has just evolved into me saying like, it's like, screw the EU stories. There's stuff that was supposed to be in the movies that should be in the movies. Just do that.
Do you want baby Han Solo on Kashyyyk?
I don't have a problem with it. I don't think that it had any place in that movie, and that because that movie was already like bloated as hell. But yeah, I mean, like that was one way to tell the origin story for Han, is that he was an orphan on Kashyyyk, right? But yeah, I would have been fine with it. I would have been fine with it in another life, in another world. We're gonna break here. Thank you guys for listening. If you want to hear the rest of what we have to say on this subject, tune in 2 weeks. That's the thing, is that like you guys don't have to wait a full month. We're gonna put it out. I'm just breaking them in half and putting them out every 2 weeks instead of every 4 weeks. So yeah, you'll get more frequent episodes of Force Perspectives, and maybe just a tad bit more of it. You'll end up with more. I promise you'll end up with more. But that's it for this episode. So thank you guys for listening, and we will we will catch you on the second half of our I don't know, what are we calling this? Like our EU moments conversation.
Yeah, yeah, it's just bringing EU stuff back. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right
Cool.
word. Yeah, EU moments is fine. Whatever.
Cool. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV. And join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/thunderquack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the ThunderQuack Podcast Network.